right. Well, we are recording. We're here for a conversation this morning with our lovely friend, Dr. Mike Shea. Mike is a former chief medical officer. Um, I won't say how many years. Now a full-time coach and still keeping his foot in the door with doing rounds and being the wonderful internist in the ICU. So thank you for that extremely hard work and staying in care delivery because we know there is a strong need. But happy to have you here with us today for another one of our culture chats where we're talking about burnout resilience. I had done a post a couple weeks ago around the new term quiet cracking, which probably is just an iteration of quiet quitting and burnout and resilience and all the things. So we thought, what better conversation to have with a doctor who is really in the throes of going from the ups and downs and really getting after it pretty consistently, and how do you manage your energy? And I know, Mike, that's a big thing that you talk with your coaching clients about, even when they're not physicians. And I think we can all relate to this experience of is more better. But thank you, Mike, for joining us today, and great to have so many folks with us.
Thank you, Rachel and Andy, for having me on today. Very excited to be here, and looking forward to how the conversation unfolds.
Yeah, awesome. So let's talk a little bit about this notion of quiet cracking. And good morning, friends. Thanks for joining us. Jen, Sherry, hi, good to see you all. Just an FYI, we are recording. Um, so quiet cracking definitions here is that folks are really just pulling back. We're disengaging from the work. It's been this intense cycle, some of us might say, since COVID, probably even before. I mean, it really just is who we are as a society, and we're burnt out and we're tired, and so we're retreating a little bit. I know we talk to clients too about like, what's your A game? Does this call for your A game? Could this be your C game? What does the work actually need? And sometimes in the name of efficiency. So I just want to open it up a little bit and hear, Mike, what you're seeing in folks, and why this topic was of interest to you.
Thanks for the lead in. Yeah, we had this conversation a few weeks ago that prompted the design for this session. I had not heard the term quiet cracking, and we started a little bit with a conversation about why is it that we have to keep re-engineering the names for these things. And it's almost like this interesting cycle where, burnout comes out and it resonates with so many people. And then there almost becomes this victim shaming of like, oh, burnout's overblown. It becomes a buzzword. And then suddenly it loses its power. And then, a new word has to come out. Like you said, quiet quitting was what we saw, towards the end of the pandemic. And now it's quiet cracking. And I think what I've seen is that under the guise of efficiency, leaders are asked to do more and more and more with the same amount of time, and either the same amount of resources or less resources. And that is a widening gap. And at some point, something has to break, and it's usually the leader. Folks who get into leadership are achievement oriented. All of us driven to achieve, driven to do a good job and to prove ourselves. And then as we sort of evolve, it becomes about, service to our organization and the community or to the people that report to us and to our employees. And um, so, the quiet cracking of putting a good face on it, like we show up, we do we do our work, but inside we are falling apart. Um, and what does it take to have that realization? You know, I heard the phrase recently, you have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. And
Mm,
that's kind of what happened for me is I had to get to the breaking point to be able to like pause and say, all right, like this isn't working.
yeah,
And what do I have the agency over to change?
yeah,
And in many systems, the answer is not much.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
there are small things that you can do to start to shift things.
yeah. Well, and I like how you say that too. There's a couple things I wanna double click on here. I think people can definitely relate to having that major fall. You know, you have a heart attack, you get diagnosed with cancer, somebody in your family dies, like, all these real traumatic things that happen that cause us to take stock and go, "Wait a minute. This is not working for me. This is not how I wanna live." And we don't need to get to that point, right? There is dissonance that happens inside of us leading up to that moment, and if we're in tune with what's happening there, then we don't have to get to that point either. But the other thing that I wanna touch on too that I think was, really pivotal that you said is there's a shame a shaming that comes with, "I'm burnt out. I'm exhausted. I can't do it." Well, what's wrong with you? Just fill up your resilience tanks. Why can't you manage it better? You know, that word resilience, like, whoa, did that take a life of its own? Like, just be more
A weapon.
resilient.
Yeah, it's a
Like,
weapon.
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, really, we're working in a system that doesn't truly support this kind of thinking and the ability to take your foot off the gas. So, you know, thoughts on that, and what do we do when that does get weaponized? Andy, I think I heard you.
Did you wanna comment, Andy?
Was that directed at me?
Yeah,
Or
go
was
ahead.
that
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Shay, Dr. Mike, go ahead.
So I think, I heard you say dissonance, Rachel, and what immediately popped to mind is I've heard many times as a leader from the organization, like, "We're people focused," you know, but there's something inside where I'm like, "I'm not feeling the people focus," the walk is not matching the talk. And that was one of those signals that for me, it's like, okay, like, notice that. They're saying this, uh, they're giving it speech, but they're not actually following through because again, there's this shaming that happens. And
And what is that? Like, what do you think some of those actual behaviors are? You know, because like, people-centric, people-focused, and it's like, well, I'm definitely not feeling that, but what does it look like in the day-to-day? Is it our PTO policies? Is it our after-hour calls? Like, what would you say really attributes to this, "You
so
don't care that
I
much
had a
about
leader
me, you care about me doing the job."
I had a leader who actually said to me, "I love my job so much, I take my laptop home and I send emails on the weekends." And I was like, "But now you're communicating to all of us that we have to check our email on the weekends."
Yeah.
And so again, like, they don't necessarily say you have to check your email on the weekends, but then suddenly if you're not checking your email on the weekends, you're missing entire conversations.
Yep.
And they're not emergent. They're just something that, popped into the leader's head while they were drinking their coffee on Saturday morning and they decided to send an email. Or that's the only time in their busy life at work that they have time to think. And so then they're sending those emails out. And so maybe in their minds they're creating efficiency, but what they're actually doing is they're modeling, burnout behavior really. Like that's the kind of thing where if you don't have time away, if on your vacation you're expected to be checking your email and answering texts, it's not really a vacation. Or if there's a bin of work that is filling while you're gone, so that when you come back, you have to do 2 weeks of work before you can, get caught up. It's almost punishment for taking time off. And I know executives who don't take vacation for that very reason.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's so many behaviors that again, I think are achievement focused. I don't necessarily think that there's some, evil conspiracy about let's, grind all of our leaders and employees to dust. It's well-meaning. Um, and again, it's self-selection. Leaders are achievement focused. So in order to rise to the top, they had to outcompete those around them. But at what point is it enough? At what point do we start to recognize in ourselves either health problems or distance from our family, our loved ones, a distance from ourselves, like we don't have hobbies anymore. I came out of my leadership position not having any outside of work hobbies and outside of work friends,
Wow.
and that was a shock.
Yeah. That's a big
A
sign.
and I think, to circle back, I think in talking about culture and kind of what companies do, Rachel and I talk about this a lot, this badge of honor to have a full calendar. Oh, I was back to back all day. I was
Yeah.
back to back.
So
And it's
busy.
like, well, if you were back to back all day, it's like that in and of itself tells us enough about what your culture is, right? Enough about how you haven't given people any space to even conduct their work, let alone use the restroom, let alone go get something to eat, let alone stand outside for some fresh air, right? So when we started to talk about people cracking, it's because some of the essential needs. We talk about this a lot, right? Like, what are the essential needs of people? We need sunlight, we need movement, we need fresh air, and the workplace has closed all the windows. You're basically breathing recycled air. It has you, and worse now, in my opinion, with the work from home, is your Teams or Slack or whatever better be active in this 8-hour period because God forbid you run to do the laundry real quick or go catch an errand, even though you're executing and getting all of your work done. And so part of the achievement piece that I think could be helpful in a shift is to stop looking at achievement as busy or as amount of hours you work and really start to focus on what are we accomplishing.
Mm.
Let's be very clear on what our goals are. What are we trying to achieve? And if I can achieve those in 1 hour of work, it's no less valuable. I shouldn't be docked or punished. If I can achieve that in 1 hour of work, great. If Rachel needs 4 hours of work to do that, great. The outcome is what we're looking at, right? Versus sort of effort or input, maybe is the right word.
And that's a great point, Andy. And so, like, let's talk about we find ourselves quiet cracking. So, how do we change it? Like, I think we've done a good job of outlining the problem. What's the solution? And I can share some of my own experience around that. The realization that I was working, only 60 hours a week. I was one of the low end people, um, and was getting pressure from my partner who was saying, I never see you. When you come home, you're exhausted and you spend the entire weekend recovering, and then you go back to work. And the only conversations we have is you downloading all of the things that happened during the workday. And so I had to hit the pause button and say, okay, like what things do I need to function? I crave connection. I'm a people person. And so one of the things that we did that really helped me was we created a lunch meeting for just the C-suite. And it was just the 5 of us around the conference room table eating lunch and talking. And we were allowed to bring work projects and allowed us to sort of know what other people were doing, and it opened up a lot of opportunity to see where our work overlapped. So, we avoided a lot of stressful situations where, the COO forgot to loop me in on something he was doing with physicians. But it also created this a relationship, and it built trust so that it wasn't, "Oh, the COO," it was, the person. And so, when my toes were stepped on, I could go to their office and be like, "Hey, I know you didn't mean to do this, but, like, this didn't go well for me." And it shifted the culture of the C-suite, and it improved our communication. And it took care of, part of Maslow's hierarchy, like, we needed food and water, so we were taking care of that. The other thing that I did, after being advised by a coach was, like, instead of having hour meetings, have 30-minute meetings or 45-minute meetings, and that way you have time before and after to use the bathroom, to talk to colleagues, to go check on physicians around the hospital and see how they're doing. Um, God forbid to go for a walk outside and clear your mind and prepare for your next meeting or to debrief in your head about what happened in the previous meeting. So, like Andy, like you were saying, it's not about volume of meetings. It's about how effective was that meeting? What were my goals? Did I meet them? Did I make it clear to the people in the meeting what we needed to achieve? And honestly, to have the opportunity to, like, interact with them as people, and be able to distribute praise where it was appropriate. And I think that created some shift.
I love that, and I wanna talk about the walking the going out for a walk, because I think that's super important. And, get the fresh air, clear, and how you said that, right? Take time to process it yourself. And I know for myself, especially in early years, I would take walking meetings. Like, I'm killing two birds with one stone. So now I'm going to be super effective and super efficient with my time because I'm getting my walk in and I'm going to take this meeting. And I still recommend people to do that. Like, I really do. And yet, I think it's a band aid. It's really just another coping mechanism to try and do more in the same amount of time, which, okay, I got my steps in, that's great, but was that really what I needed from that time? I really needed to commune with nature, to see what was going on outside, to actually take the deep breaths, to actually unpack what was going on in my own head or, whatever, having that time. So I feel like some of these interventions that we have come up with collectively are band-aids to a broken system where we're really just hanging on to figure out how do we try and take care of ourselves. We know it's important, um, and maybe that's all we can do, right? Maybe we are just coping in this system.
Well, one thing, Dr. Mike, you talked about 60 hours. You only work 60 hours. And the first thing that came to my mind is you do patient care. So if your brain is not firing, if your brain is not like on point, there's small little things that you can miss, right? And your profession, there's probably a few of them, but your profession specifically, that can be very, very scary and very, very dangerous. And there is this idea that I think we all learn in business school, but we all sort of separate ourselves from, and that's the point of diminishing returns. And we just keep trying to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. And I'm like, and I think you can probably see this when we look at customers. I'm trying to talk pretty exclusively about the US. When you look across at customer service, people are now feeling more annoyed than ever. Employees are. And so what happens with your customers? Now your customers are like, that 3-star rating, 2-star rating, poor experience. And it's like, have we are we not learning that that squeezing that rock for every last bit of water is not actually what makes our businesses more successful. And I think that's what kind of scares me, is because again, quiet cracking is quiet quitting, is employee burnout, is something we've been talking about for probably the last 2 decades, right? And apparently if we keep changing the name, maybe something different will happen, but I think the consequence is still the same. And that's what's confusing to me, that even, business folks aren't seeing that this is not even helping my business at this point. And that was the whole point of efficiency, right?
Exactly, and I think, you really did a great job of highlighting, like, it's a diminishing return. You can come to a system and look and go, "Okay, there are inefficiencies here we can fix." But it seems like the data has become the ends and not the means. So, like, when you look at efficiency, it's an asymptotic mathematical relationship. Like, you do really well in the beginning of the curve, but, like, the amount of work you do gets you diminishing returns, and you never can get to 0. You can never get there. And all that you end up doing is grinding your system to dust trying to achieve the unachievable. And so I think there has to be, this may weave into Jennifer's comment in the chat, like, it leaders have to understand, like, when is it that you work on efficiency? Like, what inefficiencies actually fixing will create benefit to your employees, to the leaders that report to you, and what is just, sacrificing people at the altar of efficiency. And I think what I've observed is there's a lot of just sacrificing people at the altar of efficiency. And, uh I've seen a shocking lack of understanding of, like, what data actually, how's the data measured? What is it supposed to be measuring? How are we interpreting it? Where are the inherent biases or the, inaccuracies in the data to use it to inform decisions, but not as the decision maker? And so I think that there is a lack of I mean, half the people I'm coaching right now are people in leadership who've had 0 leadership development. We take people who are good at frontline jobs and we promote them, and that's great because they want to achieve. But then we don't tell them how to manage people. We don't teach them how to have difficult conversations. Um, and then they burn out. And again, it's that shame thing. They don't ask for help because they're supposed to know. They think they're supposed to know because no one around them is saying, "I don't know how to do this." Everyone's kind of keeping their, their poker hand close to their vest, but it, being able to give people just basic communication tools and strategic thinking and time management skills. Time management's very different for a leader.
Well, and I will no longer subscribe to all the things you talked about as soft skills, because right now the inability of these skills is what is causing the crisis, right? So at this point, I will teach you technical stuff. Come in and know that you're a good communicator. Come in and know that you know how to effectively solve problems. Come in and know that you know how to have a decent discussion with someone that may be opposing points of views. Like, these are the things that at this point are more critical than if you know Microsoft Word. You know what I mean? Like, let us be real and honest about this. No more of this nonsense of, oh, well, these are like the nice to haves. No, these are like baseline requirements. And I'm going to say this to every HR person, every manager out there looking to promote someone: who cares about their technical skills? Like, honest to God. When you get into a management position, particularly the higher you go, the less technical you actually have to be. You really need to be a person who can engage with folks, who can get folks like excited about the thing, who can, right? You're likely not going to know. And if you do, I'm nervous. If you, manager who is here, knows as much as the people who are literally down here every day doing the thing, you're a terrible manager. You're a terrible manager.
Doing your job.
They should know more than you, and you should look to take their advice, quite frankly, which we don't do enough of either.
Mm.
I
I had this
digress.
No, that was beautiful. I had this conversation yesterday with a client. He's talking about, like, aspirations for the future, 5 years, 10 years down the road. Where does he wanna be in the organization? And, I said, "Why not CEO?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't have the qualifications." I was like, "Okay, let's talk about what are the qualifications." "Well, I have to know every department." "Why? Don't you have department heads?" Like, and really, like, it's about the interpersonal skills. It's about being able to communicate. It's about how you make decisions. It's about building trust with the people that work for you so that you can use their expertise to be able to make decisions. Like, you don't have to know everything. And so again, I wonder if, criteria that we have set or the culture we've created, we're actually selecting for the wrong leaders. We're selecting people who have a lot of book knowledge or operational knowledge and no leadership experience. And that, I talk about leaders and I talk about administrators. Neither better than the other, but they're different skill sets. I'm a leader. I'm not an administrator. I am definitely not an administrator. I need operations people and I need project managers to support me. But leaders do things that other people can't. They can build consensus. They know how to listen. They know how to understand the what's in it for me of their employees and their managers to be able to align everyone under a common purpose. And that's when you create efficiency because people come to work and get joy and fulfillment out of what they do. And they don't burn out as easily. So Andy, yeah, I loved your comments. That's uh,
That was like a perfect segue into why the why in our Be Kind life, right? Everything you just said there about how you inspire folks to connect the dots, to know what's in it for them, why this matters to them, why they care about this, why it's helping, whomever, wherever, but what really is in it for them? What's the why behind all of this? And Andy, I don't know if you have a comment, but I wanted to go to Abby's question too.
No, I was going to go to Abby's question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so Abby, I think, and the way that we really talk about this work is not so much about time because time is finite and we all have the same 24 hours in a day. So, we want to get away from the time management and the busy and the calendar and all that. So what really is it? And I think it goes to what are the priorities? What does good look like? What are we trying to achieve? And hopefully we can expand a little bit more too, Mike, on what you were sharing about the efficiencies. Like, what is the goal? What does good look like? Because we just, especially now, and we, have all these buzzwords or whatever, scalability and efficiency, and, we're scaling and we're being more efficient, again, to like what end? What is the purpose that we're trying to get to? And if we as leaders are not clear about that, there is no possible way that our staff and the folks on the team are going to be clear. And now we got hamsters in the wheel. I'm doing the thing. I'm doing the thing. So we have to get away from the stuff that we do to the impact that we have, and again, back to Andy, your point on like whether it takes an hour or four, that should be irrelevant. It's what is the impact we're trying to have here?
So yeah, I mean that leads into Abby's question really beautifully. Like, so what time on tasks, but it's meaning, and so human beings, we crave connection. We're created that way, um, and we like to feel a sense of accomplishment that is in alignment with our values. And so, if leadership isn't telling the organization the value of what you're trying to achieve. And again, if the goal is efficiency, efficiency is a tool, it's not a goal. So the goal is efficiency, you're never going to achieve it because it's an asymptotic mathematical relationship. You can't get there. So it's about finding an organizational culture of, okay, this is why we exist. And I've seen people use mission statements and, all of those corporate sort of goal statements to be able to align, but you have to actually do the conversations. You actually have to communicate, this is what we do, but more importantly, Simon Sinek's work of why. I know it's become sort of, mainstream, and some people again are even starting to be like, oh, it's just buzzword. For me, it's never been a buzzword. It really resonates with me. My why when I was a leader at the hospital was like that this community deserves better healthcare. So every day I got out of bed because I felt like I could make that impact. And that's something when I communicated that to other people could resonate with them. And they were like, "Okay, I'm willing to do a little bit more. I'm willing to give you a little bit of my time because that has value to me as well." Um, and so again, there's communication, in auditoriums, there's communication in meetings, but there's also one-on-one communication, and there's most importantly walking your talk. So people watch what you do. And if your words and your actions aren't matching as a leader, you're going to lose your people. So I think, the things that contribute to quiet cracking is you're given tasks that you don't understand the value, that over time, the work you've done either gets discarded or countermanded within months. And so it doesn't have the appearance of any value. And so you become focused on other things. Now you're not trying to find value or achieving something that is meaningful to you. You're there to get a paycheck. You're there to right. You're there to climb the ladder. Like it becomes more self-focused. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, achievement, isn't evil, but like anything, if it's overdone, it wrecks balance and it can burn a person out. So I really think it's about making sure that number one, an individual has to spend the time figuring out what's important to them. And that's one of the things that I coach people around is like, why do you do this? Like, why are you there? If you're there just to climb a ladder, okay, but like, what's going to happen when you get to the top rung? Then what? Um, and figuring out like, is this job the right job for you? And if it is, or if it's close, how can you in your leadership behaviors start to shift the system so that it is a values based organization? Um, and I think that's for me, that's where the meat of it is. Like you can't change the big system, but you can change your microenvironment.
Oh my gosh. Lead from where you sit. I mean, I think all of what both Dr. Mike and Rachel said, I think all culminates down to people are frustrated because they cannot figure out why they are there. What are they doing? What value are they providing? Why should I get up, leave my family, come sit on meetings for 8 hours a day? What am I contributing and what am I getting back? Right. So I coach a lot of people in ask this question: can you give value or can you get value? If you cannot answer yes to both of those, the meeting should go off your calendar. And quite frankly, you might want to start looking for other alternative work, right? Um, I think it really comes down to if you feel so passionate and excited to get up to go do the thing, and it's whatever the thing is, quite honestly. But if you feel passionate and excited about it, you're not going to fall into quiet quitting, even when the work is hard, even when you're working a lot of hours, even when there's setbacks and things don't work out the way you want them to. There is always this fallback of like, I know exactly why I'm doing this, so we're going to push forward. And I think that's probably what's lacking in the workplace mostly today. And I'm going to put this back on leadership again because if you are my employee, I should be sitting down with you at least once, maybe twice a quarter, where we are having this conversation. How you doing? What do you like about your work? What's not working? What can we do differently? Can I help you find something else? Maybe this place isn't right for you, but me as a manager should not be trying to hang on to you into a place to get you to do a thing. I should be trying to figure out how can I help you do the thing that's going to maximize whatever the thing is you want to do. I think if managers start to look in that way. So when we say contributing factors, I'm saying managers are probably the single biggest contributing factor. I mean, the data tells us this, right? Manager effectiveness is such a huge metric, using Gallup, um, around whether employees are engaged or not, right? And most people are complaining about, my manager doesn't know this, my manager steals my ideas, it's usually about managers. I think that is really the biggest contributing factor. Managers aren't helping people understand their why. And I feel like that's part of the job.
And that goes back to Jennifer's earlier comment, like education and training,
Mhm.
and recruiting, as we talked about, recruiting for a skill set that's different than being able to operate Microsoft Word and Excel. Uh,
Yeah.
and some great comments in the chat. Like, yeah, there are large companies regularly employing layoffs to control costs, and that's one of those other things that drives me nuts. Is they look at the balance sheet and they're like, we're spending too much money. And so they just cut costs without looking at what that does to the organization, to trust among employees, to morale. These are human beings, and uh, again, maybe there has been a catastrophic change in their industry that they have to reduce their workforce. But when you treat people like that, you get no loyalty. And so, if you treat people in that way, people are going to treat the company in that way, and they're not going to invest their themselves into, they're going to become clock punchers. Um, Abby's comment resonated with me about the intensity, like, and we were actually chatting about this before we started the meeting. We were, the idea like that I have to bring my A game every day, and I can't. I'm redlining. Like, I cannot bring my A game every day, and here's what's really cool. This was one of the hardest things for me to learn. My B game is as good as most average people's A game. If I
B
bring my
is
B
still
game,
good. B
B is really
even not
good. It's way above
not
average.
comparing. It's still good.
It's still really good, and I want my A game for the crisis. When we had the Maui wildfires, when we had the pandemic, I needed my A game. But, like, when we have some key physicians quit, I don't necessarily need my A game for that. I can bring my B game. And it's giving myself permission. There's so much external pressure to perform and to excel and to compete, and understanding that, like, each of us has unique gifts. But because we live in our own skin and we're in our own brain all day, they don't seem unique and special to us. And I think as leaders, like, one of the things that I try to do as a coach is help people understand, like, what you do in this work, like, this way is special. Like, you don't have to do it at 100%. If you do it at 70% most days, your organization, your people will benefit. And so will your family, because you'll have something left in the tank when you get home or when you're home on the weekends.
Well, and we've demonized average, right? I mean, this
Yes.
is back to
Right. Successful is not good.
right? We have demonized average. Oh my God, you got a C? That's basically a failure. And it's like,
Right?
but A is extraordinary. So if everybody is extraordinary, is it really extraordinary? As you said, I want to be S tier when the crisis hits. I need to be on point, on my game, mental tight, all the things. I don't need to be foot fully pressed on the gas, going as fast as I can every day. How Okay, let's just use a car analogy. How quickly are you running out of whether that's electricity or gas if your foot is slammed to the pedal every minute of every day? It's not a real thing. And the problem is, culturally, from the time we're in kindergarten, they're telling us you're not anything unless you are perfect. And it's like, "Oh, shocking that kids are burning out before they even graduate high school. Can't believe it. No way." The fact that we want teenage people who are 16 years old to figure out what they are going to do for the remainder of their lives.
Right.
I mean, no wonder there's anxiety. No wonder there's mass amounts of depression. No wonder people actually just quit, right? People quit on life. I mean, we sort of talked about this a little bit with like the kids today are like, I don't want a car. I don't care about a car. I'm going to get an Uber. Like they have too many things going on. They're like, I don't even care about that thing. Which when I was a kid, it was like all I could do was wait till I could get my learner's permit and drive in my mom's car. You know what I mean? But I think the pressure has gotten so high because we expect everyone to be extraordinary. So, what I like to tell clients is exactly what you said, Dr. Mike. We do not sit at perfect every day. We do not sit at extraordinary every day. It's not even a real thing. Perfection is not a real thing. Let us work towards the progress. Let us look and see if we fail. Let's fail fast. Let's figure out what we can learn and we'll keep ourselves moving because we don't want to sit in that space that, oh my God, we didn't do this perfect. Let us just constantly fall in love with the process of trying to get to the outcome versus hyper focused on just the outcome.
And I want to clarify, I saw Jennifer's comment. Like, by no means am I saying excellence is a bad thing or that like we can't be excellent every day. What I'm saying is I can't put 100% effort at all times. Like I cannot be at the maximum amount of effort. And for me, it's recognizing when I'm giving 70 or 80% effort, I'm still excellent. Maybe I'm not superlative. Maybe it's not a 99 or 100. Maybe it's a 95. And so it takes some inner work and looking at myself to understand, like, where do I have strengths that maybe I can throttle back a little bit and I don't have to have the pedal to the metal, but I can still do really excellent things. And honestly, if I'm not, to Abby's earlier comment, if I'm not frying my nervous system trying to get to perfection, maybe I'm more present for the conversations and maybe I'm more present for my people and I help them perform better. So thank you for saying that because it by no means are we deprecating excellence.
Yeah.
It's really about managing our internal efforts so that we're not burning ourselves out to get there.
Yeah, at what
Also,
cost, right?
right.
Like, at what's the cost of running at that speed or having everything at that perfect or that intensity that, you think everything needs to be perfect, So it does come down to what's the cost, and you can't that's not sustainable because we got a full life here. It's
Yeah,
not just about
Abby
work.
nailed it in
I'd
her comment.
almost I'd almost also challenge, like, where the ego comes into play on this.
Mm,
Like the A plus plus and I'm on top and I'm superior and I think Susan, you put that in there about the system. Like the system is set up. Like look at performance reviews. What do you mean I didn't get an excellent? What do you mean I'm just successful? Like it's not just successful. You're doing a good job at your job, you know? And so I think sometimes for many of us who either have been told our whole lives we're awesome, like you're at the top of the class, you get the A's, you do that was never me, so I don't have that problem. I'm like, yeah, average, rock on. Um, but but for many folks, again, back to your earlier comment, Mike, about leaders, these are ambitious folks who go after it, who have been at the top of their class. And so how much of that when you take a step back and you go, this does not actually serve my life, have that recognition and feel that dissonance, hopefully not at the point where now you've made yourself ill, that you experience that dissonance sooner. But how much of that is like a blow to your ego of, yeah, I'm actually a human here, not superhuman. I'm a human, and how you kind of navigate that in your own head, come
Well,
to
and I
terms
think that
with.
that kinda goes to the B and C, right? Again, I said
Mhm.
C is average. You are amongst the rest of your peers at
Mhm.
C. But we have demonized that to be, "You have not tried hard enough, you should be doing better," and I'm not arguing that some people couldn't be trying harder, so I don't wanna argue that. But it's to say that showing up in a system of what everybody else is doing is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes that's okay. Dr. Mike, you said this. You said, I am not exceptional at everything. I am a great leader. I'm not a great administrator. So, should we demonize you and say you don't deserve promotions and you shouldn't be able to work in these positions because you are not S tier at administration and at leadership and at clinical care and at some point we start to we are carrying too many rocks, right? And so it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not great at administration. So, and I love that you said this, Dr. Mike, I'm going to hire a project manager and I'm going to hire an analyst and I'm going to hire these people so that, oh my gosh, in this weird world, now we've created a team of really strong individuals where everyone's good at a thing that now get us to the place that we want to be. Now I don't have to run down Abby. I don't have to overload Jennifer. I don't have to burn out Susan. Everybody's got their role to play, and it's okay that they're not good in these other areas, but as a team, we are fantastic and we can get the
Yes.
job done.
Love it. 100%.
When you said something, it just made me think of how often the star player is the one that gets the burnout, right? Because we let the other folks who aren't so awesome skate by. We don't take care of that as an issue, move them along. And so we just keep overloading our aces,
Yeah.
and the aces are here going like, I could take it, I could take it. Because again, of all the things we talked about, the ego, the self talk, the external talk, like I should be able to blah, blah, blah. We're pushing ourselves, and it's like, I'll just keep taking more. Those are the ones that burn out. So you end up burning out your star players.
Yeah.
And Rachel, I think, that actually aligns with one of the comments that Susan made in the chat. Like, I think one of the things that I did to try to help shift the microclimate that I was working in was to start to set boundaries or to start to call out behavior and to do it in a professional way. Usually, like, again, I think I referenced it earlier. If someone stepped on my toes, I would find time after the meeting to go to their office and, just spend 5 minutes, not like getting into a fight, but just saying, like, hey, this is what I heard you say, or this is what I, observed. That didn't go well for me. Can we talk about it? Can we talk about ways that could go differently? Um, it's having difficult conversations. We go back again to the training and education, having difficult conversations with my direct reports about their performance and being able to say, like, hey, this is what I expect. Like, this is the goal of the work we're doing. It seems like you're spending more time on these things over here. Let's talk about that. Why is that? Like, what is the passion you have at work? Can we make your work more aligned with your passions? It goes back to Lencioni's work. You got to figure out, do you have the right people on the bus? And then are they in the right seats? Sometimes they're not in the right seats. And sometimes you need to move people around to leverage their skills. And again, even though the change can be uncomfortable and it can bruise egos, getting them into a position where the work aligns with what they're good at and their passions long term will pay benefits for them and for the organization.
They
So I
will be
think
happier. They don't
right.
realize it in the moment, but they will be happier long term.
And
Yeah.
and when you're the first person to name the dysfunction in the system reacts. So that's the other thing that leaders need to understand is that, whether at work or at home, if you're the one who disrupts the dysfunction, there will be a opposite and often stronger reaction against change. And so you just have to be consistent and keep setting those boundaries. So I remember the first conversation I had with my CEO about I'm not going to check email on the weekends. If there's something important, I have my phone with me all times. Text me, and I will go read the emails and, I will give you input in what's urgent.
Mm.
But if it's routine, I'll read it Monday morning. I'm at work before all of you because doctors start work early. I have to be in the hospital by 7. They don't start work until 8 or 8:30. So, that would be the other thing is they'd wanna have meetings at 5:30 at night. I was like, "Nope, my day starts at 7. So, no meetings after 4
Mm.
unless it's an emergency, in which case, like, I will either take it by phone or Teams or whatever, but I will not be in the office to take it." And there were, the CEO had a look on her face like, "Oh, you don't understand." Then I was like, "Look, let's talk about my performance." The same conversation we were talking about earlier. And I was a high performer. And so she said, "You know what? If your work's getting done and you're managing this stuff, I will respect your boundaries." And it was actually, it was corrective. I then created a rule which I had adopted from a former boss. I had no meetings afternoon on Fridays. And yeah, because I needed to tie up my work for the week. And often little things would bubble up to the surface like, oh, this needs to be addressed before the week is over. And as other people in the C suite adopted this, they were available for me to pop my head in their office and go, hey, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And that way you're not working until 7 on Friday and your work isn't bleeding into the weekend. And it created efficiency that actually boosted the system as opposed to, it helped.
Yeah, you didn't have to have the admin schedule a call for this conversation 30 minutes and 2 weeks from now and all this
Right.
stuff because now we're actually all free for that quick 5 minutes and we have a relationship, so it's easier to do.
But it takes courage. The initial reaction is not a positive one. Like any change, when you make a change, things get worse first.
Yeah.
Like that, there's data out there. System always gets worse first. Don't make a reaction to that. Keep building, knowing again what your long term goal is. Make your long term goal clear, and that shift. A lot of the things that we implemented are still in place now, and I've been out of the job for a while now.
Mm. Well, and I think sometimes the A word of holding people accountable gives folks pause. Like, it is 100% okay to hold people accountable when you're clear. When you're clear about what the expectations are, when you're clear about what the goal is, when you're clear about where we're going and you can see yourself in that why. Why is it important to you? But holding people accountable is one of the kindest things you can do. We're direct and they're not difficult. We don't like to think of them as difficult conversations because again, if we're clear about the expectations, then you have no other choice but to hold somebody accountable because everybody's watching. This again gets back to the role modeling too.
Yeah.
I had an executive leader at a very big company, um, a VP level, say to me, I don't want to hold accountability is too aggressive. Like people are gonna, like it's a what was the word she used? I think aggressive was the word she used, but like if I go, I don't want to be confrontational. And I'm like, well, here is a prime example of why you should not be a VP. Because if you think going to have a conversation with someone about terms that you've all agreed upon, hey, we need this done by this date, and you've made yourself available, how can I help you? Any barriers before we get to that end date? This should not be a confrontation at all. It should merely now we're just curious. We're asking questions. What happened? Well, what do you need? Where did we go wrong? What could I have done differently? What do you need to do differently, right? But the idea that I think now there's this idea that, oh, everything is a confrontation. If you say something that someone doesn't agree with or that might offend in one way or another, then we should just not have those conversations. And so if I know I was supposed to turn in work and now you're calling me out and now I'm embarrassed, now I'm offended, and I'm not offended that I didn't do the thing I was supposed to do. I'm offended at the call out for not doing the thing I was supposed to do. And this is where you figure out the nuance of how you need to be a leader, how we need to have these conversations. They are not difficult. We are talking about something agreed upon. That is accountability. You agree to do it. I agree I agree to pay you for this thing, you agree to do this thing. These things didn't happen, so now we've got to talk about what happened. Um, but I mean, this is a large company, VP oversaw hundreds of people and doesn't want to hold any of her leaders accountable because it's confrontational. Tell me how those employees are working out well.
Well, and it's so much of it, accountability has become weaponized, and I think the reason it's perceived that way my opinion, is that leaders aren't having clear conversations up front about this is the expectation, this is the timeline, here is the breadth and width of your authority, here are the resources at your disposal. We will check in periodically at this cadence, and you'll report on your progress and any obstacles that you need me to remove, and any extra resources you might need. And if we're not on, timeline, we'll make adjustments. But like,
But
it's a collaborative conversation, and it takes effort from the leader. And again, one of the things about quiet cracking is that leaders are feeling ground to dust. They don't feel like they have time to have these conversations, or maybe they don't have the right training. And so, they don't know how to clearly set expectations and manage to them. So again, I think it comes back to some of the things we talked about earlier about don't try to have back-to-backs all day. Like, simple things like cut your meetings to 50 minutes so you have time in between, or, really be mindful about setting blocks of thinking time. Like, I called it work on time instead of work in. I would work on things. It would be strategic. It would be like, okay, I would be able to review the paperwork because I would have them send me paperwork about where they were on their timeline for their project list. And so I could have direct questions ready for why are we not meeting timeline on this? Or, hey, you're ahead of timeline for that. What have you learned that is making you more efficient? Maybe it's something that's scalable to other things. Like, so that the conversation could be 30 minutes instead of an hour because I was prepared for the conversation. But that falls
okay.
on me as a leader.
You're gonna be prepared as a leader for a one-on-one? You're not just gonna show up and say, well, what do you wanna talk about today?"
Right.
Yeah. We see this a lot in leadership, a lot in, "Okay, my one-on-ones aren't successful." "Okay, well, let's talk about what do your one-on-ones look like?" "Well, when I can have them, because I get so busy, sometimes I have to cancel." And I'm like, what could be more busy? Your job as a leader are these people.
Right.
Not the it's actually not the people above you, and I think leaders sort of forget that. They're like, "Well, I lead all these people, but they need to go do." I had a VP say to me, "Why do I need to know what my directors are doing? That's why I have directors." And I'm like, well, they're managing the book of business that you're going to report up to these people about. Like, of course you need to. And how are you supporting them if you don't know?" Right? So I think you're just 100% spot on. Most leaders do not come prepared for their one-on-ones. Most people, I mean, how many just in the group, raise of hands, get a meeting put on their calendar. There's no agenda. You have no idea why you're there. You have no idea what the outcome of the meeting is. And you're like, this just happened to me with clients the other day, that meeting that they set. And we showed up and they're like, "All right, who's got the agenda?" Like, nobody knows why we're here. Nobody knows why this meeting was put on the books. I mean, if you thought about meetings in terms of actual dollars, this wouldn't happen. If meetings were actually calculated by the number of people who are sitting on a meeting and that was coming out of someone's budget, half of these meetings wouldn't even take place. So we do have to be intentional, but particularly with our one-on-ones, they shouldn't be canceled. They should be treated as the most important thing sitting on your books. And like you said, Dr. Mike, come prepared. Already know what we need to be talking about. Already have a sense of what the issues are so that now you can spend this time trying to actually problem solve instead of getting yourself up to speed.
And so much of that for me was realizing that I'd become a slave to my calendar. It's my calendar.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, my admin has access to be able to put stuff on it. So literally, like, I started a behavior where my admin would block any open time on my calendar. So when people would go into Outlook, I was booked because then they had to go through my admin to get on my calendar because I didn't want stupid meetings with no agenda showing up, or like, someone was going around their leader because they didn't get the answer. Like, they're doing the mom dad thing. Oh, dad said no, I'm going to go to mom. Like, maybe I can get a yes out of Dr. Mike. And so it eliminated that inefficiency. But I had to own, like, I have to have time between meetings to think and prepare because, again, they're not paying me for my excellent skills in, the Microsoft suite. They are paying me for the fact that I have a strategic mind and I have experience and that I can discern, how, like, so in order to go to meetings, having read the source materials, like, how many times have you guys been to like executive or board meetings where there's like 300 pages of source materials that no one have read? Right.
To look through.
Right. Like, so again, it's so.
So how do you help somebody? Because when you're the CEO or the CMO, okay, I own my calendar, right? And I think sometimes we see the flip side of this with individual contributors. They're like, I'm just pulled in all the things, and the culture doesn't really allow me to say no or to have 30-minute meetings. Like everything we do here is 45. And to your point about change, there is a bravery here. We talk about psychological bravery. Like you have to and be ready for the pushback that comes with that. So how do you push back as an individual contributor of like, can we make this a 30-minute meeting? Can we make this a 45-minute meeting without that ruining your brand or being part of your brand of that one's difficult to work with? Oh,
Yep.
here she is again. And I did say she on purpose because that's usually what happens.
Yes. Well, that's a whole nother podcast, or series, the gender discrimination. It's horrific. And I say that as a white male.
But
So
yeah, but on the calendar, like,
yes.
you
So
know,
so the
you
calendar, like, what I had to do is I had to do it with my people first. I had to model that it worked. I had to show people like, look, this works. And then like one of my direct reports started getting pulled into big projects because she had lots of time on her calendar.
yeah,
And the CEO was like, wow, like she actually started with, well, she's not very busy. I'm like, oh no, but she's really efficient. Like all the things that you've given her to do are done and she has time on her calendar. So what does that say? And actually I was fortunate that CEO was also the one who, she referenced a book called Uptime written
mm,
by a Google leader about like managing calendars and managing email and efficiency techniques to do that. But really being mindful about what skills, like what time of day is good for you for thinking, what time of day, do you have less energy and you're better just listening or reading or like, and being mindful on your calendar about booking time for those things. Like my best meetings were in the morning because that's when I was my sharpest.
yeah,
I'm a morning person. End of the day was much more about having to read articles or go through source materials to prep for the next day.
mm,
um and so, but I got permission. The CEO is the one who's like, "I want you guys to reduce your meetings to 50-minute meetings." And I actually started trying to cram all my meetings into 30, again, being very mindful of the agenda and talking to the people. I started with smaller meetings, smaller committees, working groups, and being like, "Okay, I want you to do your homework before the meeting. And if it becomes evident in the first 10 minutes of the meeting that people haven't done your homework, we're done. Meeting's over."
yeah, yeah,
Because I don't wanna waste everyone's time rehashing what you should be doing on your own. And in the beginning, it's hard because they still have all of these other hour-long meetings back to back on their calendars. But with it was one of those conversations we had at our lunchtime C-suite meetings. Like, I think we need to start doing this as a group and modeling this behavior so we can shift the culture a little bit.
yeah,
And it works, but typically over time, it starts to erode. And so I think the vigilance of a leader to be able to stop the erosion is key. Because again, there's this culture of, oh, there's empty time in your calendar. You can do more. And it's like, no, there's empty time on my calendar so that what I'm doing gets done really well.
yeah, so I can
That's
breathe
right.
for a minute, so I
Go
have breathing
quality.
space,
Let's go
yeah.
quality.
Yeah.
So I think we've talked a lot about time management and the calendaring, the power of leadership, to really be able to role model these things. So as an individual contributor, to lead from where you sit, but also escalate, elevate, and ask your leaders, and it is the leader responsibility to bring this stuff out, and the role modeling is huge. But accountability, clear expectations. I mean, I think clarity is one of the big things that we've touched on, and also knowing your why. The way to avoid burnout, quiet cracking, whatever. What are you passionate about? What is your threshold for this? What do you care about, and how do you maybe not bring your A game every time? How do you have more grace for yourself? So we're up at our time here. But Mike, if you have one last thought on any parting words of wisdom for us.
Start small. Like, you're not going to fix it all in one day. Start small, um, and find something that works and builds resilience and agency and excitement when you have success in that small thing.
I love it. Alrighty, off to celebrate the wins. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today. We really appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. You know where to find us. We'll send out a follow-up email. This is recorded, so you can share with your friends and neighbors. Yeah, we hope to see you on another live event. And again, thank you so much, Mike. Always a pleasure. Take good care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Have a great day.